to say it's a great honor to have you here with us. And anyway, welcome, Ron Athey.
I want to start with this photo, which I feel like I could talk about for an hour. That's Amy Simple McPherson, either late 20s or early 30s. I spent most of my life within walking distance of her temple. What's sort of significant about Pentecostal preachers is they're valid while they're on the road, and it decomposes as soon as they build a building. So most of my childhood was spent in tent meetings and storefronts and sort of raggedy, broken down buildings that they just put up a revival. So a lot of the elements are very akin to vaudeville. You come into town, hook the crowd in. If you don't do healing, you're probably not going to do very well. She was kind of a mass phenomenon, largely because of the illustrated sermons that she did every weekend, of which, the audience was Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, 5,000 people in the church, 5,000 people standing in Echo Park Lake. It was kind of more Pentecostal light by that time. She also did, she did do a Broadway circuit with Houdini et al., like a 10-minute sermonette between a trapeze artist and a band. So there's a line of evangelists, and most of them are women who come from the American South, actually she came from Canada, but spent time across the plains, and they become Hollywoodified. You can see various levels going on in this photo, but the dog pile in the front is probably a woman convulsing so bad that it's taking more than 2 people to hold her down. So that's called being slain in the Lord. And I think, kind of in hindsight, I started looking at kind of intuitively how I structure my performances with like funny things and pretty things and hideous things. And I would say to get to this point, the congregation came in and they sang 2 songs out of the book, just obligatory. Then she either did an illustrated sermon or a regular sermon. The choir came on, she went on and dressed in her evangelist gear again. And then it becomes this thing where you don't sing along. They're singing. And when the song ends, it doesn't end. It goes into a loop. And this is where not somebody in the congregation, but somebody at the front starts speaking in tongues. And then, like a formula, someone discerns it, what the tongues meant. And then they just start the drum, and like a bad electric guitar. And everyone starts doing one. The shaker's good, which is starting in a shake. That then goes into pandemonium. And there's people whose roles are to take care of people who hit their heads on things, or the panty police, when the dresses go above the waist, they have squares of fabric to throw like a frisbee over their coochie. So it's structured, and I still go to churches like that on occasion. One of the hardest collaborations I did was called the Judas Cradle with soprano musicologist Juliana Snapper. And the fun scene in it, and we did what musicology geeks do when they transcribe scatting or something. It was like, it's a glossolalia, bel canto, call and response. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that to show how I take this material. It's from 2005. Do I need to be plugged in something else? Yeah. Anyway, I suppose this is the final scene in this opera, And what's preceded it are quotations from pretty standard operas, as well as text from original text from writers, as well as also quotations from Jean Genet that are more tap dance style. And there's a scene on a torture instrument, which sort of crosses this line of the physical and not having to do with the voice.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. I'll find it. Just to give you a taste of that one, because I think the driest piece I ever did was when I first came to London, of course having a nervous breakdown instead of doing something exciting. I did a piece called Gifts to the Spirit Automatic Writing, which I used about 30 people, so 16 automatic writers, 6 typists, to cut up editors, vocalists, musicians, and I created a machine that formed a sort of, quick algorithm of new text based on these memoirs that I've never been able to finish from the Pentecostal upbringing, and also automatic writing being the kind of gift at that time I failed at. I failed to channel my dead great-grandmother, and which I still use today. So actually, I work in chapters in my work. So the next Gifts of the Spirit is Auto de Fe, which is what that scene is called. So I'll further explore voice, and ecstatic voice with Julian Snapper, and probably using untrained people as well. The Good Book. This does come from the Pentecostal tradition, but not from my family. In the Appalachians and the Ozarks, actually my father lives in the Ozarks, as the cities crept against the mountains, this is pure reactionaryism. Like they started stepping up how far out it was. So passing rattlesnakes, drinking strychnine, breaking fluorescent bulbs and eating the poison inside. Like somehow someone combed through the interpretation of the King James Bible until they justified these sort of shows. And again, there's a fantastic book called Salvation on Sand Mountain that really goes into the scent within these churches, because this is like edge playing. You can't get together every Sunday and pass rattlesnakes, and then when someone gets bit, I say, be careful who you take a snake from. But again, it's this, it starts out as shaker dancing, gets more ecstatic, and you get out of your head, so you can just take a snake, whip it around past it without thinking, whereas, of course, it's fear, like anything that ruins it. And entering the liquid grave. This is New Orleans in the early 70s. It still goes on. This is kind of, I call it kind of mainstream voodoo. It's not Catholic, and it's not a petrol-faction of voodoo, but it is, you have to be Catholic to be voodoo. They have an interrelationship between the African traditions, the Choctaw Indian traditions, and the Catholic Church, which it folds into. Going back to the glossolalia and the sort of spirit-filled thing, which is like that, there's often these high contrasts heaven and hell things, like going into the wet grave or a collective hallucination that the building is on fire. They're like actually in the pit of hell. And I think the cool water sounds better right this minute. And so that's the Reverend of the Church of the Infant of Prague. And that's South Carolina. So here's where research started for the series that Messianic remains as part of. That's the Incorruptible Tongue of San Antonio. I did a lot of research about incorruptible bodies, and a general topic that I love, shabby shamanism, like things that may not be true of the beautifully sculpted wax body of Bernadette. Everybody shot it with formaldehyde and waxed over, but there's supposed to be some piece of jerky that just won't go up in smoke. But the tally sheets of reliquary, that there's 9 breasts of Saint Agatha, 14 eyes of San Lucia. It goes on and on, but it's still something super amazing about lining up to see a relic or a miracle site. But that's not where this came from. There was a clash of two worlds in my work that started in the 90s. So I started kind of actionist work in the 80s that was super abject, because I was like, fuck you, queer punk rocker. Skip ahead 10 years, everybody I knew was dying or dead. It's in the middle of apocalypse, and very analytical within that. Like, some people, when they start dying, they turn into like Scarlett O'Hara with the handkerchief out, like the kind of melodrama, and the sort of people who flock to the bedsides of the dead, and also when dementia started playing around, like the sort of daily horrors, and also notions of what healing is, and what logical, intelligent people would suddenly be flying somewhere for some weird herb, or to get their blood boiled, or some kind of guru fag hag, or all of those things was saturated point, and somehow I've been positive since 1985, so let's say when you get to the 11-year point when I made the first Incorruptible, the cocktail hadn't come out yet. So because of the reality, I've been living with death imminently, biting at my heels for 11 years, and to not even think of myself actually destroying my world. And any mentor I could have had, anyone I ever admired, died, and I was hateful in a way. And as I dissociate, I went to Glasgow to do a residency with an artist from Chicago named Lawrence Steger, who probably was the closest person to kind of a mentor to me. And so thinking of the living dead, the sexualized corpse, applying it to ourselves, we made this first piece, which is, now this isn't a performance, but it is. This is somebody I worked with in nightclubs at what preceded techno, like Club Fuck in 1989-90 in LA. He's also in the great late Iranian director Reza Abdo, who was in his piece Boogeyman. He was sort of one of those magic children that are sparkling every minute with enthusiasm and hunger, and had about a month left to live there, and it was how we lived, always in these sort of situations. So we just shot that. I guess I'm trying to say the sort of richness and the bloat, I could almost miss it. This is called Incorruptible Flesh, Dissociative Sparkle. And it's the only durational piece I did. I did it in Glasgow, I did it at Artist Space in New York City. Only those 2 times, 6 hours. And really creepy, like, because it's that long, there's never really like a big audience there until the end, so it's just like one person or 6 people, but they touch you in this Reiki, New Agey sort of way. And I thought it would be more varied than that. And I also realized that I lost control of the performance by letting it be interactive. But so let's see.
Ron, can you just explain the attachments to your face, because it's not clear.
Oh, okay. So it's basically just a rack I'm laying on. The baseball bat is running through a screw, and then a foot of my ass, and then there's flash hooks that pull my face back to a board that's attached, so I can't actually close my eyes or stop smiling. So there's somebody that puts eye drops in my eyes once in a while, and that's the Warren Rovich biographer Cindy Carr. This is a blank drawing which led to the next Incorruptible, which was about Philoctetes, and it's also a little nod to Ron Bonner's piece about Philoctetes. In short, Philoctetes had a wound that wouldn't heal for 10 years and was abandoned on an island for being a whiner until he was seduced and healed. Gotta put these in the right order. Based on I just got this video this morning, that's why it's online. So a few weeks ago in London, after like round 2 of developing, and I still have 1 more round, I showed Messianic remains, which is part 4 and the final part of the Incorruptible Flesh series. I don't strategize things. I was possessed by a voice that forced me to use that rack again and let people touch me, but I've done some work with it, and instead of it being this creepy New Age thing, it's like a gangbang. So I'm going to show the beginning. It's more varied now. It's only 20 minutes, and it's an odd format to go from the body being in a traumatized state where you have to zone out, you don't have any focus, to a theatrical space. And in the theatrical space, we actually change rooms and draw a ritual circle and appropriate kind of thing. There's Lucifer Rising, but using the text of Divine's Funeral from Our Lady of the Flowers. Let's give you a little of this. I haven't watched it since. actually think those don't work, like doing a literal ritual. I don't know why, but I also don't believe in anything, so I don't think we're really going to raise Babylon by doing anything. So there's a bit of, I don't know, I think I occupy my own position on that. For instance, the thing he's trying to circle with, I've been working with a psychic outside of Manchester named Peter Leckie. So all the wood is from church buildings, like the cabinets from a Presbyterian church. The handles are from coffins. Everything's like blessed and cleansed, and I love that, but it's not my practice. But I like using those objects, and I'm still working with him on other props. Also identifying the state, like how to go from the AIDS body to the 3-therapy cocktail body that I don't take, to the post-AIDS body, which people like Sarah Schulman scream about using the word, to just being older. Like I'm going to be 53 this year. I've had a goddamn cloud over my head the whole time. So whatever, so to keep this piece has ran through those different periods, and I think this is why I don't know, maybe it's not roundedness, but I went to Our Lady of the Flowers and opened it, and since divine is dead, the poet may sing her, may tell her legend, her saga, the story of divine. The divine saga should be danced, mined with subtle direction. Since it is impossible to make a ballet of it, I'm forced to use words which are weighed down with specific ideas. But I shall try to lighten them with expressions that are trivial, empty, hollow, invisible, and true to form. The eternal passed by in the form of a pimp. The prattle ceased. Bareheaded and elegant, simple and smiling, simple and supple, darling Daintyfoot arrived. The torso on his hips was a king on a throne, a Greek. He entered the house of death, walking on air. So it goes on into more dying in her own blood, etc., TB. But the idea that you have to wait until the subject, especially if it's an exploitive subject, is dead before you make your little ditty, even though they're not quite important enough for a ballet. It's kind of bitchy and queen-phobic, a lot of it, but it slid in that awkward after post-AIDS sort of position in there. I've been working with a younger artist also on geometry. She's been researching Valentina Dupont, the future feminist who, is a complete nutter. Did choreography, said she didn't, and then moved to Cairo and converted to Islam and changed her name and wrote political papers. It's super interesting, but the idea of the energy of the geometry in movement has fascinated me for a while. My kind of movement mentor was Julie Calatino, who came out of Alvin Ailey in New York. So I sort of started seeing through that lens really, really early in my work as well, how to move through work and the different connective tissue involved in that. I'll find something unlikely from that. Okay. Make it open, Johnny. I just wanted part of the research of this piece and something, it's easy to say big never things. I never felt an attraction to performing in the great outdoors and actually hate, I don't even understand why galleries are white, like why we're still following the format of the hygiene gallery 100 years later. circle actions and some of the pharaonic images in Joshua Tree, which is this sort of broad landscape, not cluttered. I think this is
Sorry, it's refusing to. Let me just throw one else.
that's okay.
Try 666.
Is it at the bottom?
Yeah.
Of the trash? It's, I think maybe you used to put the trash. No, that's the reason.
It's right this way. Okay, I'm gonna go to this other way. I want to show this anyway. I'm tired of the Messianic one. Let's shake up here. Kind of a ridiculous drum roll for me was approaching 50. I did a series of pieces on the self-obliteration 1 and 2, and also I did a redux of myself as Sebastian, which I've been doing, since the beginning of my work. It keeps reappearing, and as inspired by Mishima, actually. So I think this is a Madrid. I'll show the oblit, which was another probably a way for working with me that was more in line with the solar anus, where it didn't actually have anything to do with me. And also and I think as my skin became more grizzled, I bled more and more every time. So by my 50th birthday, it was rolling down all the sides of the platform. And people were pressing this, and it started getting numbers like 14 people fainting. It was, you know, kind of a lot. And not using, I just chose the materials I wanted to use. Like I actually wanted to reach a state. I didn't want to say anything. And so then when, again, possessed by a demon, I thought I had to like fist myself with my own blood. I don't try to find context. I try to find my own logic where I can't do something. So I spent like a year trying to find my logic not to fuck it. I just did it, and somehow it was never the moment. If you lasted that long, you just last and staying in a certain intention in that. And then my collaborator, Julian Tolentino, has a project called The Sky Remains the Same. She asks certain people to archive their piece. I don't have a formula for my work, like here's this piece on paper, like a Fluxus instructions or something. So I'm doing this piece. I would like to actually see, since I keep embedding my own history into it, that this is this like, you know, again, this aging post-AIDS body. What would it look like on a Filipina, lesbian, you know, a totally different kind of body, and to do it simultaneously, not do it like you do it on a different night. So we did it choo-choo train style. And it was actually kind of incredible where it didn't even pulled it out of the polemic, you know, into something even more pure for me. Or I did learn more about what that kind of state that I was trying to get through. And that is. I think I'm going to stop early because I'm tired.
Okay.
You just talked me out today.
Well, thanks, that's great. What you were just doing, it has to be named, but it struck me as the no space. That the no space doesn't have to have a logic, and that it just is.
Yeah.
Space. And I just think that, you know, what you play around with, the ingredients you start pulling together, just do.
It's a circle space, and this is the only time I have the luxury of moving into a second room using people have to like
Yeah.
mow it out of the way to have room to make it. People are stubborn.
Yeah. That's great. Any questions for Rob?
Well, just a comment really. Really enjoyed watching the work that was also you work. Just on your point, this sort of accessing the idea of the no space. If we go back to that point from earlier about religious being cultural artifacts, it's interesting that what you're putting together are lots of sort of almost recognisably religious motifs, but in an unrecognisable order, and a conflation of things which is not previously experienced, but which in a sense has an association to religion. And in that way, it becomes this transgressive action, and it isn't degraded by previous experience and associations in the way that, you know, you were talking earlier about experiences of a particular church.
But I moved to England 5 years ago, and the first book I read was Why Mrs. Blake Cried, which is this kind of tracing of Blake's parents to Moravian and Swedenborgian churches and doing sex magic rituals with Kabbalistic Jews. But what that book kind of led me to was the timelines when the spiritualists in the U.S. and England were collaborating, and when it kind of fell out of favor in the U.S. and went on forever in England. And this alignment not only with the beginning of the Surrealist movement, but then this kind of Pentecostal, not called as such, revival in Wales that was simultaneously with the ones in the States. So that's what I'm just interested
And, and my question actually is about your audience, because this did not come out clear of the videos and pictures you showed. Coming from Vienna, we have this whole tradition with actionism, you know that, and most of these things which are documented in film or photographs basically happened in a very safe environment. And my question is, where and how do you do your work?
The last performance I did was at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. I performed at the Danao Festival in Krems with the band and my solo thing. So, you know, from rock and roll to Ex-Teresa in Mexico City, which is a desanctioned 17th century convent. And just, it depends on the piece. Whitworth Hall in Manchester.
But it's public, it's public event.
Public, but not outdoors.
Yeah.
It's absolutely public. And the only time there's ever been any trouble is when a presenter is nervous and tries to fill it up with the right people, which is kind of what happened at the Walker Art Center 20 years ago, which caused a long
Kerfuffle.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a notorious event.
Yeah, I also had a question sort of originated from Nietzsche, and it's sort of like when you look at some of the actors and it's like when it kind of started with transformative techniques, it entered galleries and museums and became theater and kitsch. Do you have an opinion?
Oh, I absolutely do, because I think the appealing thing of live work in this weird performance art genre is that you can bring almost anything that helps it interpret, and it was largely British academics who stated live art and theater was evil, and then it's actually a contamination, like most things now. To go back to 70s Polish work and say this is the only live art, like a non-theatrical person in their day wear comes and opens a paper bag and there's a light bulb inside it and they break it up. Do you know what I mean? That already happened. Why should it still happen? Like nothing work, or excuse me, Marina at the Serpentine, or, you know, I'm just bored to death. Tina Segal. I don't want to know about that work. I like something more. And what I was explaining about this piece where people touching it actually splits in half. I love stage work. I love burlesque. I love something alive, but just not following its own rules of its own genre. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, Barney.
I was just struck by a comment you made
Please
about
shout because people can't
I
hear.
was just struck by a comment you made about the complete obliteration piece, and what strikes me about most of your work up to that point is that you've got very formal recognition of the material that you're using, whether that's the blood, the rituals, time. These operate as ligatures, restricting also the kitsch, the vaudeville, and the humour. All these are formalisms, and as such they work as restrictions that you've worked within. You define and sculpt your performances out of them. And it seemed to me that bringing the theme of this conference is that with complete obliteration, that something happened, that you slip the boundaries of this material, and you moved beyond, and you changed this material into something else. And in a way, you made, with that performance, you made this alchemist move where you changed the lead into something far more precious. And in the process, you obliterated your core self. Temporarily,
Semi-permanently.
but for me, it was a bit of a game changer, that performance, because it was a move of an artist beyond formal observation of his materials.
And I guess like the one I did actually on my 50th birthday in New York, it was really destructive, and I had a growing paranoia that the glass was going to break, and so knew it was the very last time. So there was, I don't know, I did hit a state of ecstasis where I didn't know where I was or what I was doing, or there was no separation between it. I wasn't performing with people watching me. It was like a K-hole, like actually. So I consider that successful, but too scary to live in.
And how did you change that? What did you do?
Well, it was the last time I did it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And is now you're sort of reflecting upon it, talking?
I did have a long come down period of that, and then still doing like the automatic writing one, which is a different kind of piece. It's more like a workshop participation piece that I'm live directing. So this one is the first one back, and I haven't gotten there with it yet. The Messianic. I'm 2/3 of the way there, I
We were
guess.
going to bring along this whole group, that's what the original intention was, to have that performed in Stan's Cafe tonight. But unfortunately, we weren't able to progress with that for a number of different reasons. Mostly having to do with, people haven't organized financial scenarios well enough to work that, because there are a lot of people involved. But, I mean, I think that part of your question, Yvonne, focused on this, what I was hearing from you was a slight negative. I'm not sure if I heard that right, but it was a negative around what happens when transgression becomes like every day.
Well,
Is that what you were
I think
asking?
there's something, well, I don't know, it's like psychoanalytical point of view, I guess. There's a very tendency established psyche somewhere. And it's washed away. And somehow, that maybe motivated some of Europeans of our generation to engage or being interested. So when the washing away happens, then, how's the coming back? It goes back to the scene, you take the bird away, but the bird has come back. Your psyche has to reintegrate, if you like, or you're gone, you're mad, bye-bye. You see what I mean? And so,
I always have to reckon with high highs and low lows. Like the more out there I get, on whatever, the harder the next day of washing the dishes and doing everyday things is. It can't be that bloated, and yet that's the exact schism that I was raised in, which was raised as a living saint in a household where I wasn't wanted. Because my mother was in a mental institution and my father was in the military. So it's like this extreme schism never stops of where do you sit, and yet.
and it's not a negativity, it's a complete respect and fear
Oh, really?
of
I'm
that
not sure.
point.
And any other questions? So